Hey guys, real quick before we get too far into the video, I did want to let you know that I did pre-order Jedi Fallen Order, and I will be playing that on my Twitch channel later tonight around 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Link to the channel is down in the description. It's twitch.tv/omnimedia. I hope to see you guys there. Some of you guys wanted me to do what I've been doing with Arrow and talk about each episode of The Mandalorian as it comes out. So I gave you guys my first initial impressions. I didn't talk into great detail about what all went down just to avoid spoilers, and it was just fresh out. So, I already mentioned that I really dug the episode. I gave it, in my own personal ratings, I gave it pretty much a 9 out of 10. This show, the first episode, gave me more than I could have thought I was going to get in this little thing. I did expect it to be a little bit longer. I did think that the runtime, though I didn't notice it while I was watching it because it felt the pacing really kind of made the episode feel full and self-contained. I didn't find myself by the end of it being like, oh, it's over? And I didn't find myself at the end wanting more or thinking that it happened too short. It didn't feel rushed in any kind of way. So I felt like by the end of it, I think it justified its own runtime because it didn't stay or linger on anything or really rush through a lot of things. So I really appreciated that about it. But we're going to go into the specifics of the episode just a little bit more. Some of the things about the episode that I really wanted to talk about with you guys. So this is going to be spoiler filled. There will be spoilers throughout if you haven't seen the episode. I know this is still a new system for everybody to get used to. It's been having some problems here and there with the servers in various formats. I know I haven't had any issues on my iPhone or on my computer browser, but I know when I tried to watch it the other night on my PlayStation, I was getting some server connections, and there's still some wonky bugs on that version as well as putting the subtitles out and above the screen, which was a funny thing to find out. I watched this with my girlfriend the other night. So this was her first time watching it and my second time watching it. And this was a really fun kind of thing to play around with because there was an interesting little spin that she put into it with. She plays a lot of MMOs, mostly Final Fantasy 14 or something like that. So the fact that she pointed out, we'll get into this here in a little bit. I'll talk about the specifics of it a little bit further once we get into things. So here we go. Again, another warning, spoilers for the first episode of The Mandalorian if you have not seen it. So the opening sequence of this, a lot of what we saw in the trailers for the show was mostly pulled from this episode. The bar scene, the stuff with IG-11, all of that kind of came in here. What we've seen with Carl Weathers so far with his character, what was it? What was his name? I forget. Grief. And then Werner Herzog's character. Well, the whole thing kind of panned out. A lot of what we've seen has been from this first episode. Now we've got some glimpses from things that weren't shown up, what didn't appear in this episode, like the fight with the Trandosians, the other characters outside of the what we'll assume will become the main party of our cast. I'm going to use some terminology from MMOs in this because it is kind of funny when you start to kind of look at the pacing of this episode. So, which may be lost if you haven't ever played one yourself. So I apologize. I'll try to explain it as we go through it. But anyway, the opening scene of this, we have the fight where the dude gets trapped in the door. Lots of practical aliens, a lot of familiar aliens, a lot of things that we've seen from the original trilogy, from the prequels, and even from some aliens that have only been known in the games, in the expanded universe, and the Clone Wars and stuff like that. And that's what I've really been missing from the sequel trilogy is, as far as there's been some nods with some ships showing up in certain scenes, like with Rogue One and whatnot, that we've really felt like in the sequel trilogy we've been in a isolated part of the galaxy where not enough is familiar to me. We haven't really even seen any recognizable aliens too much, and I understand like seeing new things or whatever, but this one at least sprinkles things throughout. We see a lot of new aliens, we see a lot of new stuff, but it's nice to finally see some things that are recognizable. And of course, it's going to play on the nostalgia a little bit, and that's maybe skew things a little bit, but it worked for me. It got me into it. This is a different part of the galaxy. We're getting away from the Force. We're getting away from that kind of the Hrug bigger things and focusing on this little outlet. And we start to learn a little bit more about the world. And I just really am engrossed with this character so far, the Mandalorian, and what we know about him so far. And he makes a great introduction. The whole little sequence in the bar is just quick. It's very tense. The buildup is nice. It's so Western, even down to the score for this episode is very, very Western inspired. And it just sets a great tone. I loved it. And the action was great. The only thing that was a little weird and jarring was the alien in which he was hunting, the bounty he was actually there to obtain, which was the person getting chastised in the bar by this group of ruffians that he takes out, like we see in the trailer. And you see the one alien gets cut in half in the doorway, which was awesome to watch. And just him speaking basic was a little strange. And it really, like, this is Dave Filoni's live action directorial debut. And I think that's the one thing saving grace for this too, as well as jarring as that was. If you've been someone who watches Rebels, Resistance, the Clone Wars, it felt very familiar. The pacing, the way this is shot, directed, cut, and everything like that, and the way it all pans out feels like a live action episode of Clone Wars. And I really enjoyed that. That's kind of something I've been looking forward to a little bit with this. And it very much gave that kind of feeling. We got some little cameos from a comedian. I can never remember his name, Brian something or other. He was the guy that pulls up driving in the little rust bucket speeder that he takes after he's found his quarry and is heading back to his ship. And we learn little things about the Mando as we progress through this. There's little things that incite on his character, like the first speeder that comes up. He doesn't want it because it's piloted by a droid, and he has an apprehension about droids. He's like, no droids. And they pass up, and that's why he chooses the rust bucket to be driven around by the rickety old comedian driving him around as like a little chauffeur. I like that because it builds his character, and he's got a little bit we'll build on that. We've had some inciting inferences we've gotten from the trailers before, some of the clips, from the still images that show like a little bit of glimpses of what we can assume is the Mandalorian's past, which this episode later confirms. But he goes away. He goes to the ship. The ship is a Raven Crest. It's a pre-Empire model. It's really nice, the aesthetic. And this gives us also our first glimpse of the first toilet, at least that I've seen in Star Wars, which it honestly is a little jarring, but also just kind of hilarious. This movie might as well be a movie. And there's talks, apparently, Alan Horn mentioning something about this possibly branching off into a movie. But that aside, we got a toilet. And there's so many callbacks because the showrunner for this series is Jon Favreau, and he's a very vocal proponent and fan of the holiday special. And there's so many callbacks from that. We already knew that he took the gun that Boba Fett wielded in the holiday special animation, and that's the Mandalorian's primary weapon in this, aside from his holster blaster. And aside from that, we get a mention of Life Day. That it's not just a Wookiee holiday; it is very much a galactic holiday because his bounty species even celebrates it, and that's just another callback to that. There's another one later, which we'll get to. He turns in the quarry. We see this awesome shot of these carbonite frozen, his other bounty he's already collected on his little venture. This is the last one on his stop to turn them all in for the collection. Nice, interesting little kind of comedic-ish moment on the ship with the bounty quarry. I can't remember his name or his species. I apologize. But he's running around the ship because he's handcuffed where he's going to go. They're in space. But he just talks too much and he's doing some shady stuff. So he throws him in the carbonite chamber and freezes the man. And then that's it. That's it. And he goes off and we meet. He goes off and lands, and just another kind of very Mos Eisley-esque scene of him walking to this other cantina on another planet where we jump around a good bit in this episode, seeing some different familiar and new areas. And it's great visually. And it very much like the way this is shot, the way the visuals and the aesthetics are pulled together, very much feels like this could have been made back when the original trilogy was made. It harkens back and echoes that kind of aesthetic, so that it fits in very well with this time period, being only a few years after the end of Return of the Jedi. So it makes sense. But we go in, he turns in his bounties to Grief, played by Carl Weathers, and they try to negotiate their prices because we get a little bit of more world building here. As we've seen, like back in Not Everywhere Accepts different credits, as we saw in the prequels with Watto on Tatooine. It's like Republic credits are no good here. And so we get something now. He's like, he offers him payment in Imperial credits. And he's like, have you forgotten there's no Empire? He's like, these things still spend some places, but he needs something that is more stable. So he offers him half the full bounty price because his only other currency he has available is calamari flan, which is the Mon Calamari's currency, which we're getting some just interesting inner workings of just the way the world operates in this, which is something that's been also lacking from the sequel trilogy. We don't really understand the machinations or the world that we're in, except for some very small, very broad kind of things. And I like being down on the ground with the common folk, so to speak, and seeing how this is kind of playing out, how it's affecting them. So he takes a pay cut and takes a currency which he knows he can at least spend and use. Inquires on a new bounty, and this is a special one. It kind of get work that the bounties hunters work for a guild. So it's not like these rogue people. There are kind of like these rules between the systems. There's these guilds of bounty hunters that have their own kind of like duties, laws. They hand them out. So there's an operation of how they work, but he needs something that pays a little bit more because the bounties he's currently offering, barely cover the cost of fuel these days. So you get to see how the effects of the fallen empire is affecting the world, the galaxy, and the systems. And so he offers him something a little more risky, a little less a little more under the table. It's a underworld kind of bounty offered, which he only has not a name or anything like that, but just a location, sends him off. And that's where he meets Werner Herzog's character, who seems to be an ex-Imperial, where we see him enter the room with a bunch of dirtied up stormtroopers, which, this is so many years after the fall of the Empire. They're not maintaining their uniforms, and seeing worn, dirtied, nasty, the white is like yellowing on their armor. It's just really interesting to see like the way it has progressed for them. They weren't part of the the Empire's fallback plan, and they're just some of the ones that are left behind. But he's the one offering the bounty. It's not with money that they're paying, but with a rare metal that is used to be primarily controlled by the Mandalorians, Beskar. And it's a very sought after material, and he offers him, this should be in the chaos of the systems now. Shouldn't it be nice to return some order by having this back in its rightful place, back with the Mandalorians, with the tribes? And he's given the bounties after all they can give him is a tracking fob and and his age. The bounty, the query he's after is 50 years old. That's all they know. That's all he can tell them. I think they know a little bit more, especially the scientist that comes in who wants it very much alive, probably to study it, probably for, scientific reasons. But something about it, Werner Herzog's character is very much, yeah, live's nice. Dead also works. Of course, if it's dead, it's a lower price. But you know what? I'll still pay you if you kill it. You can definitely kill it. Please kill it. Anyway, dead or alive, he offers his bounty and he goes off. So this is where the MMO aspect of this comes in. Kind of. We're going to start here. Actually, we'll talk about the rest of the story before we get down to it, because I think it's a lot funnier when you get to the end. So he goes off, he tracks it to this planet, he goes down, we see Nick Nolte's character, which he goes down, he scopes off the planet, which is really great. A lot of these rural, very backwater kind of planets, I like seeing this area of Star Wars. The less populated, the more underbelly kind of things, and that's what we're seeing a lot of in this, and it's really great. We get a Blurg for the first time in live action outside of the Clone Wars, and he gets a little attacked. He gets saved by Nick Nolte's character, who's an Ugnaught, I believe is what that race is, if I remember right. And he has this little thing, like he talks to him, he tries to help him, gives him aid, and every time he ends one of his little speaks or his conversations with him, he ends with this little like, "I have spoken," which is just awesome. I don't know why, but it's really just the way he carries himself and the way it's delivered, and then that little just character tick, I just enjoy it. "I have spoken," and he just leaves. He pretty much, he on this planet, since this bounty, this person or thing that a lot of these bounty hunters have been coming here to try to get, this has been a place that people retreat to for peace And ever since that thing arrived there, there's been nothing but bounty hunters coming in and dying, trying to get it. And there's just been unrest while it's there. That's the reason he helps the bounty hunters. And that's the reason he helps the Mandalorian when he arrives, is because he's heard and read the stories of the Mandalorians. And if anything about them is true, he wants to help him do it, because the sooner that thing, not that he wants it dead or wants it out of there, but the sooner that whatever this enclave is out, and the bounty hunters stop coming, peace will come back to their little planet. They don't have to worry about all these people just showing up and causing a ruckus. So that's one of the reasons I can kind of buy into his motivations for helping our character. Before we ended up here, I did kind of gloss over a little bit that was just so awesome, building into the Mandalorian culture. So after he gets the Beskar, because he gets a down payment for accepting the bounty from Werner Herzog, and he takes both the calamari flan and the Beskar bar of Beskar that he got from Werner Herzog, and takes it back to this enclave, this hidden enclave of Mandalorians. We see the sigil of the Mandalorians above the entrance, and he goes in and we see a bunch of different people in the shadows, children, other adult not bounty hunters, Mandalorians, because not every Mandalorian is a bounty hunter. That's one thing this is trying to establish here. But we see lots of people. Some people are even claiming that one of them maybe, or kind of looks like Boba Fett. So maybe one of them is Boba Fett. I think it's unlikely. I don't know if we're going to see or harken back to or really touch on Boba Fett too much. Maybe even so much as maybe just as far as a mention, I think we might get some point during this, but I don't think we're going to see him. But there's still a chance. I'm not saying it's not, but one of them may or may not have been Boba Fett. But anyway, we see a bunch of different Mandalorians, and he goes into this blacksmith, which may even be the clan leader. I can't tell, but it is a female Mandalorian because identified by the armor and the helmet that she wears, but she's their blacksmith. He shows up, he gives her what he could bring in, his take. So it seems like they're providing for the Enclave. There's a little line where she says, "Has your signet been revealed?" And he says, "No, not yet." And good. So it feels like they're really kind of preparing for something, maybe a take back or a rise or a return of the Mandalorians into some sort of framework of power. I don't know, but there's definitely something going on in the background with the Mandalorians that's going to be built up. But I just love the air of culture that is bringing into this with the Mandalorians and everything like that. The way they honor, the way they work and operate as a guild, as a unit, as a tribe. It's very, I don't know, tribal, and I like it. It definitely builds and expands and kind of confirms some things from what used to be expanded universe stuff and bringing it in here. She melts down the armor or the Beskar that he got as his reward, his own down payment towards his own fully realized Beskar armor. Because at this point, I think only his helmet is actually made of the rare metal. And she forms a pauldron out of it, and she even makes a statement that the excess of the Beskar will be used to be reforged into armor for the foundlings, which is what they call their younger, not kind of like the youngling for Jedi, but this is foundlings in the Mandalorian. But from what I can also gather is at this point, I think they're also bringing in non-Mandalorians into the Mandalorian culture and making them Mandalorians, kind of indoctrinating people or accepting people because of some purge that they have mentioned. And I can't remember the great purge that they're talking about, because I definitely don't think they're talking about the Jedi purge, and I don't recall a Mandalorian purge, at least in the current canon. So I'm not sure if that's something they're just kind of alluding to, but they're taking in people from other cultures and adopting them into the Mandalorian culture. And as she's hammering his pauldron, we see glimpses back to his past, where his family was attacked, where he was sheltered away in this hole to be protected from the droid army attacking whatever planet he was born on. And we just see chaos and laser bolts and explosions, while it just flashes of it, glimpses of it each time when she slams the hammer in this moment. And in this moment, we further learn more about him. We learn he was a foundling. He wasn't always a Mandalorian. We learn that his drama from droids is more than likely from the Clone Wars, a planet that was sieged by the droid army, the Separatist army, and possibly in either confrontation with their own militia or that of the Republic fighting on the planet. So it kind of definitely builds the world more and definitely builds, without directly saying a lot of things, this character. But that aside, we skip over that part. He gets his new piece of armor, his new equipment. He unlocks, gets his quest reward and gets his first piece towards his full armor set, which we see in the trailer that he does eventually get the full different set of armor. Right now, he's kind of got like a mix match of different things pulled together, which again ties into the analogy, which I'll get to. Anyway, flash forward back to our Nick Nolte event when he's on the planet tracking the quarry. Great little moment, really interesting little character there. He doesn't want any money. He doesn't want any part of the reward. He just wants these people off his planet so the peace comes back. So the only thing that he wants is one of the blurgs that he took out as his payment. The other one he's going to give to the Mandalorian because he will need it to actually get to the Enclave where the bounty is held up. So we get our little moment here where he tries to learn how to ride the blurg, and we get another callback to the holiday special where he talks about you can surely tame this thing. If you're actually a Mandalorian, your ancestors used to ride the great mythosaur, which is that dinosaur thing in the holiday special that Boba Fett's riding. And so it's a nice little kind of Rocky-esque moment where he's learning to tame this creature. I feel like this moment would have been more well-deserved if it played out in another episode later after we've learned a little bit more, because it seems like they play it up as this very triumphant kind of moment, and we've only really just met this character. So it does kind of feel like it came really early on. It's a little weird, but it still plays out really fun. But we go in, he finds the Enclave, he rides the little Ugnaught. God, I did it again. The blurg out to the Enclave where all of these aliens are held up. They see like this gigantic metal door that they've managed to track down their bounty to. As he's scoping out the area, that's when we see IG-11 coming onto the scene. He also, we find out, he's like, bounty droid, kind of coming in with his kind of racistness against droids, his unlike or distastefulness of droids coming into play just a little bit. But he finds out that somebody else is after this bounty. So he goes in, there's just littered with people defending this place, and he goes down and he partners up with the droid, and they start to take out all these people. We have such an awesome action scene because I thought the IG models, IG-88, especially back in Empire, I always thought that droid looked so dumb. I was like, man, it just looks like something they slapped together out of some, like a freaking, just a bunch of like car parts that fell apart. But they go hard at showing just how awesome and effective and efficient this thing is, because the way it moves, the way it acquires its targets, the way it functions, all just flows, and it looks great. And it always looks practical when I swear it's got to be CG, but it'll just look so good. And the banter between them, because every time they get, it's just hilarious, like their banter. But every time they get in like a tight spot, they get pinned down by a bunch of guys because they're just outnumbered. So the IG model, being a bounty droid, it's got proprietary parts as part of its manufacturer's design. If it is in threat of being captured or retrieved, it has to initiate a self-destruct protocol, which it keeps trying to engage, but the Mando's like, no, stop it, cut it out. We're getting out of this. We got to improvise. And it comes up a couple times, and it is just a hilarious little joke. And their banter, like I said, is just great. And this droid is very much matter of the fact. And they kind of like make a deal with each other to split the bounty, since they're both part of the Bounty Hunters Guild. So they work together, they get out of it, and their banter is just really great. You think this is awesome. They're going to be a great little duo throughout this whole thing. But they manage to get pinned down yet again as this person wheels out this turret and just is unloading on them. And this scene is just so awesome. They use IG as a decoy, and he uses his grappling hook to get hold of the turret and pulls the guy to where he's actually exposed so that he can hit him. He shoots him off of it, pulls himself onto it with the grappling hook, and just starts unloading on all the guys. And it's just, they take them all out in that moment. He just, and it's true Star Wars fashion. They do kind of, the guys they're up against do have kind of a stormtrooper kind of aiming accuracy, because you would think they would hit them more times than they did. But they managed to survive it. IG took some battle damage, but nothing too severe. And they use the turret to open the door, and they go in to find their query. And that's when they find this little basket. It points, the tracker fob goes into this little basket. And I was like, huh, that's funny. So I thought it was a baby. Well, maybe it was a baby. So my initial instincts, because I forgot about the 50-year-old thing, I was like, is that going to be Rey? Who is this? Because I remember, we talked about it before. They said there was some major spoiler for the Star Wars universe in this episode. And I was just like, what's it going to be? How's it considered a spoiler in its own show if it's being revealed when it's supposed to be revealed? Anyway, I don't know. But that's why I was like, is it going to be Rey? Does that scientist want it because it's Rey? Am I just stupid? But then I remembered the 50 years thing, and it became a little more clear when it started to open up. As they open up the basket, it's revealed that it's a little freaking baby, whatever Yoda's species is, because we still don't have a name for that species. George Lucas was always very adamant about not giving it a name. So whatever that species is, it's a baby one, and it's still a baby, and it's 50 years old. So that raises a lot of questions for Yoda's life cycle, because if it's still an infant at 50 years old, Yoda was 900 when he passed. Was he just hitting his 40s by our calculations? I'd have to do the math on that, but it doesn't seem like he's knocking on the door old if he was an infant at 50. So I'm really curious about how that biology is going to factor out, but this seems like a major plot point to reveal this in here. Are we going to dive more into what this species is? Are we going to learn about it? Is it inherently force sensitive? Is that why this Imperial is very like, you can definitely kill that thing. If you find it, we'll take it dead. Because somebody else sent IG after it. Mando took the bounty under the guise that it was wanted dead or alive. But IG, whoever offered the bounty to IG-11, told him that we want it terminated. So somebody else, which I'm leaning towards Werner Herzog's character, maybe sent out one to kind of, maybe one with the guys that, wanted dead or alive to appease the scientist, but probably under his own time, probably hired the IG to just kill it. Because him being an Imperial doesn't want anything remotely close to something like Yoda coming back into the world after they've suffered so much at the hands of the fault of the Jedi and all that, especially after the fall of the Empire with Yoda training Luke into this situation. So I'm curious how that'll all be revealed. But that just means so much to have just another baby of this species. A lot of people have been calling it Baby Yoda, but it's clearly not Yoda. With the age, though, with it being 50, before we get into that. So when they find it, IG-11 wants to kill it. And Mandalorian tries to talk him out of it. He's like, no, wait, we can't. No, orders were clear to terminate it. So we get this beautiful shot where IG raises up his gun. It cuts to the Mandalorian's face, just the helmet, of course, because he hasn't taken off the helmet at all, because it's rumored that they never take off their helmets, which will be curious to see if we ever see Pedro Pascal's face in this. But we get a full frame zoom in on the Mandalorian's helmet, and you just hear the blaster fire, and you see the flash of the blaster bolt. And you're like, did IG just kill the baby? And then just that second later, you see the IG-11 fall flat with a big old a laser hole through his brain, just down. So who knows? I mean, he is a droid. He could be repaired. He could be restored. He might still be the Mandalorian's partner. He might still have a larger part throughout the series, but maybe this is the last time, or maybe we'll see other IG models throughout the rest of this, since they would all be employed by a guild, the Bounty Hunters Guild, since they're bounty hunting droids. But I don't know. Just caught me off guard because I expected him to follow out throughout the rest of the series, which, like I said, he is a droid. He could be repaired and reprogrammed and repurposed, so maybe. But yeah, so the Mandalorian is, one, doesn't like droids. Two, part of his little honor thing here. He's got some humor. He's got some stuff. We're getting some build up of his character, of his culture, the things that built him to where he is. And now we're getting some insight into his values. He wouldn't kill this child. Now, there's some theories behind this that I would like to go into, or some speculations that I have or have heard as well, is that, it could just be like a point of pride, is a moral thing. Mandalorians are a warrior culture originally. That was something that was phased out of their planet over the years, which caused some civil disrest between certain factions of Mandalorians. But primarily, they've been a honorific warrior tribal culture. So honor has always been a part of it. They like the fight. They like the fair fight. They like combat. And, I don't, part of me thinks that this was purely just because, he sees no honor in terminating a baby. There's no honor or pride to be taken in that. So that's my interpretation of it. It's like, no, they said dead or alive to me, so I'm going to save this thing. So he takes out the IG model. Some people have gone as far as to say, we know that his parents died during the Clone Wars. So maybe seeing what another of this species, kind of, maybe that implies that maybe during the attack that took out his family, that devastated his planet in his youth, where he has this PTSD of droids, maybe he has some inclination towards this species, because maybe all of that happened on a planet in which Yoda had been leading a battalion of stormtroopers or clone troopers against the separatist droid army. And maybe that's why he holds this thing in such regard or wants to protect it, because it holds some value or meaning to his personal life, as opposed to just being something about the honor or pride in killing an infant that can't defend itself. So you can take that as you will. Now, what I wanted to play out a little bit here about what my girlfriend and I were talking about when we were watching this episode was that this whole thing is paced out very much like a quest, a fetch quest. You have him tracking down your guy. This is your target. You take him in, you go in, you turn in the bounty to your quest giver. You get your reward. He gives you your next quest. So it's a chain quest. You got to get to the end of them to get your reward. So, he goes in, he turns in the required items, the material, the possession he got from taking in the little blue dude at the beginning of the episode, gives that to Grief. He gives him his next little fetch quest to go to this guy to get his next quest. And that leads us to another planet where he meets this guy that allows him to unlock his ability to use a mount. And then he has to train that mount, which is something you do in an MMO as well. You eventually have to learn the skill to use a mount. And then he travels off to the area, the high level zone. You just got here. You're still a low level person. This is one of those little areas that may or may not require an additional party member. It's recommended for people of 2 or more parties to hop in there to take out. But you were recently leveled. You find yourself being a little bit of a BA, and you're like, I can take this solo. But then you see another player has entered the zone, and you decide to party up. That's where he sees IG-11. You decide to party up and tag team this little mission here, since you're both in the same zone and working towards the same goal anyway. And you go across, you find it, you get to the main end, you take out all the enemies, you get right to the end where you get to the chest with the loot that you're after to fulfill your quest. And you know what? You're feeling a little skiffy. You're feeling a little dirty. You're feeling a little underhanded, a little PvP-ish. So a little, maybe I don't want to share this. Maybe I just want to troll this person online. So you disband the party right there at the end. You turn on PvP mode and you just take him out just out of surprise. Not enough time for him to prep his abilities or anything like that, and just take them out and you take the loot for yourself, and they'll have to redo this whole thing themselves. I don't know. It's just all panned out very well in that kind of way. If you watch this episode from the point of view that this is like an MMO, it's like an RPG because all of the elements were there. I mean, heck, when he goes to his class trainer to turn in the materials that he obtained on his other quests, they give him one piece of armor. It's like working towards your faction to get a full set of armor pieces to get your full gear. That's why the mismatched armor also comes up, because when you're leveling in like an MMO, it's also very much like not everything's going to match in the beginning, because you're just taking whatever works and whatever gives you the highest stats throughout. until you finally get a piece of epic armor later, until you finally work towards getting a full set that actually goes together. This is really great. Everything about this episode was fantastic. I loved every bit. The aesthetic, the tone, the music. The music was a little wonky and out of place at times, mostly during the whole like Rocky training session with the Ugnaught and the Blurg was a little strange, but Nick Nolte's little Ugnaught guy was fantastic and enjoyable all on his own. But this episode did a lot of world building by showing and doing really little. And I think it should be rewarded or praised at least for that. Again, running in at barely 40 minutes. This was fairly short considering standard episode lengths that we've seen for series similar to this. But that aside, I really enjoyed what we got. I'm really looking forward to the next episode, which we'll be covering Friday, assuming things don't go. It'll be Friday or Saturday, assuming. I'm going to try to get it to it Friday night when the episode actually has aired, but we'll talk about it then. And yeah, so we'll keep following up on these. I love this episode. I love this introduction. I love the world building that this is all building out to and doing with this. It's just, I don't know. It's really enjoyable. This is like what I've wanted from newer Star Wars. You know, it's kind of nice to get away from the drama of the saga trilogies because there's a lot of drama in the fandom, a lot of drama in the behind the scenes stuff going on with them, that it's just really refreshing to just kind of still be in the Star Wars world, but not have to worry about a lot of that, the pain and gain of what's been going on around Star Wars here lately. So it is refreshing in that manner. I've seen a lot of people harp on this for like, if you take the Star Wars element, you know, this really isn't doing anything that fantastic, but isn't that the point? Because this is Star Wars. Unfortunately, at this point in age, you can't really get away from Star Wars. This is what we wanted from Star Wars for so long, and I think it delivers on all of that. And I don't think anybody needs to take the winds out of our sails for it, because this was just such a great new dive into the Star Wars live action universe, and I loved it to death. And I can't wait for the people that still haven't got Disney Plus out in the UK and the other countries that don't have this yet. I still feel bad for it, though I already know there's already headlines for it. This is already the most pirated thing out there. I even had some people across the seas talk in the comment sections about it being put on Putlocker and other things like that. They're just waiting for it to be uploaded. And I don't blame you. It's just like, this is such a big thing. It's such a global thing for it to kind of be held off and isolated to a single area. I kind of wish they would have streamlined the release a lot better for this. But unfortunately, I hope everybody's getting a chance to watch it, because if you can, get it. Check it out. Watch it. It's worth it. It's awesome. That's my thoughts on this episode, and I loved it to death. So this is a long video. I apologize. So going forward, I'm probably going to do the Arrow thing where I'm not really going to break down the entire episode, just talk about key points. But there's just a lot of things that I want to talk about this too, that just, especially being the first introductory episode that to cover with you guys. I gave you guys my quick, simple review in the last video. It was only like a couple minutes long, and then this one's we're almost coming up on 40 minutes at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. I want to know your guys' thoughts, your opinions on this, your theories and speculations on what that might mean at the end, what that could lead towards. Favreau did say it will be part of a major plot for the rest of this season, so it does matter. So it is going to carry through. So I'm really curious to see what they do with this ending, what this might mean, especially if we learn that maybe it's a force sensitive species, and maybe that's why these ex-Imperials very much feel threatened by it. That would also tie into another reason the Mandalorians might be interested in it, because they have such a tight-knit cultural history with the Jedi. So there may be something tied into that, and maybe we'll explore a little bit more of the Jedi-Mandalorian conflict as we learn more about the Mandalorian culture throughout this series. So, loved it. Share your thoughts in the comments after the video. We'll carry on this conversation there. And thank you guys. If you like this video, please support the channel and doing something this lengthy by liking, commenting, and subscribing. For you guys that are still here, still watching, thank you all. I really appreciate everybody that's been helping build the community, participating in the community and all of that, and supporting the channel. You guys have all been awesome. Everybody new, welcome. Feel free to jump in and dive in and join the conversations. And thank you all. This is going to be it for this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. May the force be with you all always. Take care, everybody.